Okay. Okay. So can you see my screen well?
It is coming up. Yeah. Yep. Perfect.
Okay. So a while ago we decided to build an app through Noodle
Yeah.
um, as a part of our portfolio because I thought Noodle was quite um, versatile.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, we had to learn it and it was quite hard. We liked it though. We liked how it had like a UI, this node canvas, and hooking up everything. It was a lot more easier than coding,
Yeah.
that's for sure. So we are uh, quite far ahead from where we thought we would be, uh, and we're stuck in this particular part where uh, we are right now trying to select one of the objects from the repeater. And what we need to do is actually uh, select a user so that we can assign them um, and store them
Mhm.
so that we select them as payees. So our app that we're creating is an expense management app.
Mhm.
And when a user creates an expense, they have to be able to select payees. So whoever paid for something, um, we would let the user sign them, and that right now is not working. So from our understanding, uh, if we hook up like a click function
Yeah.
directly from the group, um, where we take the data directly from the repeater.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, so let me try toggle. There we go.
Yeah.
So we want the payee to be selected here like this,
Mhm.
which right now is, but um, anything that's hooked up to this will uh, only work with the last object. I think as you've explained,
Mhm.
um,
Or like the preview
right
will show
here.
you the details from the last object or not. Sometimes it depends because you're looking at a preview of one component that's running four times concurrently. Like you have this same component, as in imagine it's in like four different tabs, right? And each tab has this
Yeah,
exact same thing. That's kind of
yeah.
what's happening. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, we're quite confused because if that's the case, um, then like we don't know how it'll run when it's on the other ones
Yeah.
because we only have the preview.
That's okay. I mean, they'll
Uh,
they'll all do the same thing, so we can work with that. But you have to conceptually understand that what you're trying to do here is you have this parent component, which is the new expense item window, right?
right.
Within that parent component, there's a repeater, which is just a placeholder for four duplicate components. So when one of those components has something happening inside it, we've got to get the data outside, like up the tree, like up the hierarchy to the higher level, or else we can't do anything with it. Or well, we can, but I think in your case, what you want to do is get whatever the data is from where we're currently clicking. We want to have that go up a level and say, hey, this is the ID of the thing that's being clicked. Um, and then what we can do is, and I'll explain it, we'll go through it step by step. We wanted to go up a level to tell the sort of new expense item level, this is who I've clicked, and then also have that kind of filter back down into the repeater items to say, hey, am I the one who's clicked? And to take the data from the parent item and say, okay, I see there is something that's being clicked. Is it me or is it one of my brothers or sisters, like my siblings?
Right.
So we'll work on that. Have you guys tried using component objects?
Um, Component objects?
Uh-huh.
No, not really.
Okay,
I
so
don't think so.
you've got two different ways of storing data in Noodle inside the browser, like to make it available within your app or within the browser. So one way is setting, which you've done. I can see a few examples setting objects and setting variables, which you may have done as well. I think I've seen one there as well. So setting objects and variables, it calls a Noodle function that's global to the whole app. So when you set a variable, then that variable is available everywhere until the user refreshes the page and starts again. So that's one way that we could set the data and say maybe we'd have a variable that is currently selected payee and select the and set the ID, for example, and then that's available everywhere, which is fine.
Okay.
But just kind of the development principles that I would stick to normally would be the simplest solution possible is the best, because I find that when you just do kind of a lazy option that's not the simplest one, um, or not maybe the most elegant in terms of simplicity, then it comes back to bite you in the ass later. So what I would do is think more about, okay, I only need to know which one is clicked within this screen. Like when I leave the new expense item screen, the payee is going to be reset. I don't need it. Like if I open a new expense item, I need that to be reset. So it's not a global variable I need like over all the pages who's the payee that I clicked. I just need it in this one component. And so component objects are kind of like a temporary, like a local variable store. So within one hierarchy, say a parent and a child, we can have them pass data between each other using using component objects. So to kind of understand it better, I would add in here a node that's called set parent component object properties. If you just look up set, just type in set, you'll find it. Yeah, set parent component object properties.
Interesting.
This one?
Yeah.
Set and component object properties.
Okay, so we need to set some sort of property. So let's say here it's going to be um, like
The ID of the
payee ID. Call it, yeah. Add a property called something like payee ID or whatever you like in the properties panel there on the left. Yeah. Okay,
okay.
and it can be any. It doesn't have to be set to a specific type. Um, and then we're going to pipe in from the object that takes the data from the repeater, which is the one there that's called object. You're going to want to
Yeah.
put the ID of that connected to your parent yet. And then when you click the group, you're going to want that to trigger the set parent component object. Yeah. So what that does is that tries it looks above itself in the hierarchy and says where is the component object that I'm supposed to be targeting, and it will send the data up that way. So up would be
Um,
the new expense item screen, I guess, or wherever it is. Like maybe you can show me where you need to recoup that data to know who's been clicked.
um,
Sorry,
so we
I meant like in the components, like which is the parent component of this one you're showing me that
right.
needs to receive that data of who's been clicked so that it can like enter that somewhere.
I'll be over here.
Okay. So then here would be where you would set up your component object, possibly. Although possibly not. When you, where does the data get finally kind of sent to the database of who is the payee?
Um, so we made a relations field to currently to keep track of who's currently clicked. And so if we click on that same user who's already been clicked, we delete them from the relation.
But this is in the case of a new expense item, so we haven't created an item yet, I would imagine. Or do you create a record in the database every time a user goes to this screen, or you only create the record when they click the create button at the bottom?
So how we set up is within the expense, you
Yeah.
can have multiple items,
Mm-hmm.
and per item, we create a new expense item record here.
Yeah.
So if we create one like this,
Okay. So now you get like a blank expense item in theory,
let's see. Yeah, uh,
or at least you should.
it's not showing out right now, but uh, and then yeah, this would be the record that we would be working with
Okay. So
from here.
this is just a user experience comment, and it's not to say you have to do anything about it, but um, when you so there's a couple of things. User experience wise, it means that the user, when they see the create button, it's not really create, it's kind of save. Like they've already created it and they're just saving it. I get the remove button means that I've actually created one, like a blank item, so I have to remove it, or else when I go back, I'm gonna have like new expense item with no title. But
Right.
normally, in my experience of doing apps, it would be when we go into a new screen like this, a new item screen, it's only at the moment that you click create that the item's created. However, there are cases, and maybe you'll argue that this is the case, where as we're setting up the item, it takes so long and so much effort that if the user accidentally like closed the browser window, you would want them to be able to come back and pick up where they left off. So you could argue, well, if they've 99% filled it out and accidentally they close the browser tab, they're going to be pissed. So I would rather have it a blank item that's kind of dynamically filled in, and then when they click create, it's
Oh,
just a safety measure, right?
yeah. Okay.
So it's just
That's
something to think about. The other thing to think about is if it's only an internal app, that's fine. But if it was a public app where you might want to have thousands of users one day, um, if you look at, do you see where you've got the, not in the database, but in the components there? Do you see the way every time the text input is changed, it's doing a set record properties?
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like it means that every time there's a keystroke, it's sending an API call to the database, which is on a local app, no problem. But if you had thousands of users and they're all, for example, entering an expense all at the same time, you're going to have thousands of calls to the database like every second because they're typing in something and it's doing a call every time they hit a key, right? The database is external, so this front end part has to do a call to the back end part, which maybe you have in AWS or something like that. So it just means there's a lot of traffic. And if it was a production app that you want to publish, then that would not be a good way to do it. It'd be better to just do like
Okay.
maybe let them type, and then either when they stop typing, that's when you save, or like you could say they have to click a save button or something like that.
Or maybe when they finally create it.
Yeah, or even there's another way, which is not maybe the best, but when there's an output from the text input that's called blur input, and that's when the or on blur or something like that.
Blurred.
Blurred, yeah. So blurred is the opposite of focused. Focused is when you click into the input, so it'll send a signal saying somebody's clicked into the input, and then blurred is when you click out of the input and go somewhere else. So that would maybe be a moment of like, okay, they've finished with the input, they've clicked outside, they've moved on to something else. Then that's the moment to save the data, possibly. But then there's the risk that, maybe they carry on working on it, or they immediately click create and it doesn't quite hit the signal at the right moment, and maybe the data doesn't get saved. So it's not 100% without risk, but it could be maybe one method to save plus
Okay.
maybe also a second signal that also saves after, with a delay node, for example. Say that when the text is changed, you could add a delay node and say if there's been a 5 second or 2 second delay between the last keystroke and now, then we save the data. So if I'm like typing, tuck, 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 then it won't save. But if I stop typing and then like 2 seconds later, it'll save. That would be with a delay node. That's another possibility.
We'll keep that in mind. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
it's okay.
We didn't know. Uh, we
Yeah,
didn't really um think about
it's
that
okay.
kind of stuff.
But like I said, if it's just an internal app, I'm just I'm talking because I like the sound of my own voice. If you don't need it for an internal app, so if you want to like make it public, then that would be something to really work on.
That's the plan. Yeah.
To make it public.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. But then yeah, definitely think you got to think everywhere there's a green node that's about records, set record properties, create record, query record. Um, you should do an audit of all of those nodes and just see like how many times are they being accessed every, you know, how regularly are they accessed in the app? Is there any way that you can use more like local data rather than calling the database all the time? Because if it's being published and going public, then that will cause the backend to slow down if it's getting so many requests, just because of poor
Okay.
architecture.
Okay.
So sorry. So this is where we create the name of the expense, but where are we supposed to be saving the payee in the database?
Uh, so that is in the repeater uh that we set up.
Okay.
Um, so how we hooked it up was when we click on a um payee here, it'll store the ID of the user, and it'll create a relation here, and then it'll query to see if they have been clicked or not. So I'll just show you how it was set up, and then based on we did a function to check if they're in the relations field by putting it into an array
Okay.
and then finding that ID
Yeah.
from the ID that we've stored, and then checking to see if it's true or false. And then based on true or false, it will we wanted it to highlight it as this user has been clicked,
Yeah.
basically.
I think this
And
is.
then
Sorry. Go ahead.
you've explained you explained that um we can't really do that since it'll run multiple times.
Um,
Like,
no, you can't. I mean, the way you're doing it, I think there is a way to make it work, but um, the way that you're doing it is relying a lot on getting data from the backend. When just as an example, is the user already in the array? That would be something that we could check by initially querying the expense item and then pulling the users that are in the relation. So finding which users are related to this expense item, and then saving that, sort of storing that. For example, in the component object, that would be a good place. And then, oh no, maybe not in the component object because it's not good with arrays. What we want to do is to have that list of users from the database initially when we open this expense item, because I imagine this screen is probably going to be used to edit expense items as well.
yeah, so we can uh, uh
Like an existing
this is
one
just
running.
for that one.
Okay.
It's just for one item.
Okay. But once you have several items, I can click one of them that already exists to go
Right.
back in and edit it, like make changes to it, right?
It will show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So
Yeah. So there's, like I said, there's a world where that would work, but I think the easiest would be that we do something more focused on um, local data. So using arrays and using object nodes to be able to know which user has already been clicked or not, because we're going to have a list of users. So I think your setup that you're showing me here looks like it's doing a lot of work with the back end rather than just working with what we already know in the front end. The rule would be if you can have the data in the front end running in the browser and do operations on it in the browser without touching the back end, it's always going to be 10 times faster and more efficient. unless we need to really be actively updating the back end for whatever reason. But the back end is the data window that you have. But I think that the easiest way to do this would be we're gonna go. Let's just do a little experiment. Let's go up a level to the new expense item part, and let's do an array here. If we create an array here that's called, give it an ID of current expense item users or payees or something like that. Yeah. And then so when this opens up, you get the payees from the query. Okay. And where is, okay, expense daily record? No. Is there a moment somewhere here? Expense. How do I know which expense item I'm writing this data to? Like, what's the where you have set record properties? How do you get the ID for that on the right side
We
there?
get it from we get it um by assigning the ID of when we create the expense item to the user
Yeah.
um as a string variable. So we have a bunch. It's like, I don't know if this is the most efficient way, but we have like the current expense ID, expense item ID, etc. This is how we keep track of um,
Yeah, I see what you mean. Again,
the records.
that's really using the back end. Every time that you make, it means that every time you want to know what the current expense item is, it's kind of coming from something in the database. And then once the user leaves that expense item, we kind of have a wasted field in the database. It's not being used for anything. So consider one day your app gets to thousands of users. Each user has a certain amount of data in the database that's unused, and that it could be clogging up searches when you're trying to do a query. It might be a bit slower because the objects that it's querying through are bigger than they need to be, for example. So
Yeah.
there wouldn't be the most efficient way for this. What we're trying to do here should really be setting local variables, local objects, local arrays, and not setting things in the database. We don't have an argument to say, oh, when I refresh the page, I need the user to be coming back to that same expense item, so I need to save it in the database so that when they refresh, all the variables are wiped. I can just pull the last expense item from the database and know which one they need to see. But I don't think we have that argument here. So I think working with local data would be the way to go.
Okay.
Um, where are you setting the current expense item for the user? Where does that field in the user table get set? As in, like, where on the, what's the action on your canvas that sets the current expense ID?
So we have to go back here, right here.
Okay. Okay. So we create a new record. Okay, create a new record is okay. We don't, like we said, if we want to make a expense every time that we click the new button and then they have to fill it in, or it just stays in their list as a blank expense, that's fine. What I would do maybe is, instead of setting user properties, I would set a variable, I suppose it would be more variable, into set variable, and then make it the same as what you have for the user, so like new current expense item ID or something like that. Yeah, and then
Will
set
it be
that.
okay if it's the exact same while we're
Yeah,
working on it?
totally,
Since
no
okay,
problem, because it's local
oh, it's local,
variables.
right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
okay,
And then just do that instead of the. You can keep the set user properties thing for now, just to, you have the example. And then we need the value to be the ID of the new record. And then we can go back to the where we were before, the last screen you were on. There's actually like a back and forward button. I don't know if you've noticed that yet. At the bottom left, next to where it says actual app, there's like a back that takes you back and forward in the canvas to the previous pages you were on.
Oh, I think
Oh,
Yeah,
did we use this?
that's taking you in the preview backwards and forwards. Yeah, it's confusing.
Okay, so yeah, we didn't really
No, it's all good.
see this.
No worries. So let me
So like
fix.
this, it'll show you an item right now, but it's not populated.
Yeah, it's
But yeah,
okay.
where were
Um,
we?
so that we have to kind of redo the architecture a bit. So I'm not sure we're gonna have time during this call today, but if we go, yeah, where we've got like the new, wherever it says new current expense ID, then we would replace that with the variable node and just take the ID from there instead. Yeah, like that.
so is there a time where it would be more efficient or better to use like the stuff in the back end over the local
It's yeah,
data?
it's like a really hard question, and it takes a lot of thought in general. Like it's really fundamental to the architecture of stuff, like especially with Noodle, but with most apps. Yeah, there's it really depends on the case. There's like so many different cases where it might be better to have it in the back end or in the front end. But the general rule of thumb is um, if whenever you need something to be persistent, like that it won't just go away if you refresh the page, then you should at that point set it in the back end. If there's a possibility that the data has changed, then you should query it from the back end. But I think of an example. Um, shopping carts are a good example where if I add an item to my shopping cart, it's not enough just to add it in the local front end, because if the person refreshes the page, then their item is gone, and that will annoy them as a customer. So they should have all the items immediately saved in their in the database, so that when they refresh the page, then it comes back up again. Or in like a lot of shopping websites would do, they would actually store it in something called local storage, which is browser storage. So like if you're on Amazon, it'll save items that you add to your basket in your database because you're logged in. But if I'm on like a site that I don't normally go to, and I add something to my basket, it doesn't have me as a user, so there's nothing to put in the database. So it saves the item into local storage, and when I refresh the page, the local storage is persistent. But if I clear the cache of my browser, then I lose my basket because I'm not signed in. There's no way to save my data in the database because I have no reference as a user. So there's just a million different possible cases where it's good to do it in the back end. It's good to do it in local storage. It's good to do it in just ephemeral browser data, local data. It just depends. So it's something important to think about.
Hmm, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. And yeah, so here what I was trying to imagine was if I add a user and it's going into the current expense payees, yeah. So um, what would happen in this screen would be, what I would imagine would happen is when this new expense or existing expense screen opens, we have the new current expense or existing current expense ID, whatever it is. I mean, maybe it should just be current expense, by the way, because it could be new or
Yeah,
existing, and it's going to be coming
yeah,
into the same screen. So, but that's just again something to think about. Um, what's going to happen is the current expense will go in, as the ID will be there as a variable. It'll pull the record, maybe it'll query the database to be sure that we have the most recent record. I don't know how it would work. Um, then it'll pull the, if there are any relations on that record already, then it should pull them
yep,
and put them into the current expenses payees array. And at that point, that's so to answer one of the earlier questions. At that point, we stop querying the database. At that point, we say the user's in this window. We've made a call. We know who, at the moment they opened the expense, we know who the users, the payees were. So we can store them locally. And then until the user makes a change, we don't have to change any relations. So if they add someone or take someone away, we can just work with that locally. And then if they refresh the page before saving, then those users are not highlighted. The changes are not persistent. That could be one possible solution. Um, or again, we say, no, actually, every time they click a user, it needs to have a new relation added to it. Okay, then we need to do in the database. Okay, then we need to do two things. We need to have the array be updated and the database be updated so they're in sync. But the array gives me a really easy reference point to see who has already been clicked or not. So the local data and the database data are always synchronized. That way, we can do that with arrays and with the system you already have, which is sending a signal to the database. This will make sense in a minute, I hope. If we go back into the repeater, you can actually just double click on the repeater node and it'll take you into the repeater item.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when somebody is clicked, you add a relation to the expense, which again, we're going to change from the user current expense ID. We're going to change that to the variable, but you're going to do that all over the place. Then also as part of that process, we should do a add object to array or remove object from array node. We're going to need two nodes. Oh, sorry. Insert
Set
object.
object property.
Insert object into array
Insert object.
and remove object from
Okay.
array. And this is actually something you need to do here too in your relations. At the moment, you're adding a relation. So if I click on one guy in the list, it adds a relation in the database. What happens if I click that same guy again? How does it remove the relation?
Uh,
Oh, there. Okay.
so
Okay, got it.
yeah,
Okay, so it's doing a test. That's where you do the test to see if they're already in the list or not. Well,
right.
that test is now easier because we can just test the local array to see if the user's in that array or not. So that would be with a function. I think would
Regular
be the
array.
easiest way to do that. Probably an AI function. So we would say yeah, we can say like check in create a function that checks an input array to find one object with a specific input ID. If it exists,
Specific input ID.
if it exists, output a true signal, and if it doesn't exist, output false signal, something like that. Yeah, maybe add signal because otherwise it'll just output a true like boolean. Yeah, good. Try that and see what happens. Okay, if you double click into it so we can mess around with it a bit, where it says input array, delete input array completely. Just inputs array. Inputs.array, yeah. And type in instead noodle with a capital N dot arrays dot what did we say it was? Current expense payees or something like that. What did we call the array above in the upper in the parent? We can check as well.
Current expense page.
Okay. It has to be with exactly the same like capital letters and stuff. So I didn't have. I thought I had a small c, but maybe I'm wrong.
Think it did. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And
Like
input
so.
ID is, yeah, that's good. And input ID I think is okay because we're going to take the, what are we taking for
I'm
that?
gonna input it.
We're taking the object ID, exactly, yeah. So that's,
Um,
yeah, we can take the object ID and connect it to the function. And then when you run that, it's going to output either to the remove object or to the insert object node. So if it's true, it's success. No, okay. To change where the on line 17, change success to um, not found or something like that. Change them from like line 14 should be found and line 17 should be not found.
just like that.
Yeah, perfect. Just it keeps you. I like naming things correctly. It just is like it's so important when you come back to stuff later on.
Right. Okay.
So those
Fine,
outputs
fine.
now connect up to the insert object. So if it's found, we're going to remove it, and if it's not found, we're going to add it, insert it. So if you connect the function to the insert object and remove object nodes. So if it's, what did I say it was? If it's found, we remove it. Yeah, that's right. And if it's not found, then we insert it. You want to go to each one of those array nodes and click on it and set the one at a time and set the array ID. Just click that and you get the current expense payees. And the same for the insert one. And then connect up the object ID to both of the object array nodes. And it's object ID, yeah.
And we have the array ID from
Yeah, the
the
array ID is
parent.
already there. It's all good, and you need to run that then at the same time as you're adding or removing your relations.
Um,
So probably our function is going to replace what's happening there on the right side with the check ID existence and array. I think our function is going to be quicker to do that, and that should be just the one function that controls putting the object into the array and adding the relation or removing the relation. Should all be happening from that function after the group is clicked.
we'll do this, and I'm just gonna hook it up like how it was, just so that we have reference.
I'm gonna have to jump off in 5 minutes, but we can maybe continue this another time as well.
Should I do it on click here?
Yeah, click, we
Okay.
test the array, and then we add. Yeah, and we also we might not even need the. I don't think we need that parent component object anymore. I think we're good with that. That was just a,
Okay.
yeah. We can delete that. Because the yeah, there's a second thing that we need to do with this as well, which is maybe not. Yes, we do. When I open an expense and there already are two users clicked before my previous attempt, right? Two payees, sorry,
Right.
two payees are selected. Then when I open it up, those two payees should go green immediately without clicking on them, right? Like if I have an expense I've already done and I've reopened it and there's two payees that I had selected before, then those two payees should immediately be green when I open it, right?
Right. Right.
Then when we open an expense with existing payees, that check that we've just done, check existence and array, should also probably be run. But we don't.
Or you're breaking up a little bit.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. Yeah, no.
I couldn't hear
Yeah, my connection kind of sucks sometimes.
this connection. Yeah.
No worries.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, sure. So when I open this and I want A and S to immediately be green because they're already related to this expense from a previous creation, then I need to run that same check object existence in array. I need to run that, but not with the objective of removing an object or inserting an object. I need to have maybe a duplicate of that and run it to be able to set the state, because your states at the moment were being set before by somebody clicking on the group or not. But what they should be set by is if I find the current object in the array of payees, then I should switch the state to selected. So we'll need
Right.
a duplicate of that function. We need to copy paste it onto near where the states are. I think would be a good way to do that. If you copy paste the function and then run it as well when on the group signal is mounted or mounts or whatever it is, the main group. Yeah, so did mounts run, and then switch the state from if it's found, then we want to make it green, so selected, and if it's not found, then we want to make it unselected. Yeah, and that'll be a more reliable way to mean that every time something's added to the and actually we could probably do when remove object from array and insert object into array is finished, then those could actually trigger that same function. So it's
That
constantly checking, is this in the array or not, and it's not working on like the state after somebody's clicked. It's really working off the contents of the array, and so then it's like the one source of truth, and you're sure that it's going to be going green when it's supposed to go green, because we're working from the array data only and not from what the user is actually doing. Right, what the user clicks, it's only affecting the contents of the array. It's not changing any like visual states on the screen, and it's the array and the contents of the array that actually change the screen. We need to connect up the object ID to that function as well. The
oh
object, yeah, that one there, yeah. So that would be a good way to go. And then so now you need to add the relation stuff back in that you had before as well. So you have to have this tandem thing happening where we add it to the local array and then we add a relation or remove a relation.
that um,
I think it was remove relation. Yeah. And I would put them over on the other side with the left function. Yeah. And you can have them in parallel. Have the function found or not found outputs trigger the add record relation or remove record relation as well. Yeah.
not found to add, like if it is found, then remove
Then you need to connect
a
up the
lot.
object ID as the record ID or whatever it is, target record ID. And our variable should be the ID of those two relation fields. So I don't know if we have the variable still on there somewhere. If we can just add it back, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a new current expense. Yeah, that's the record we want to add to. So that should be the ID. The value should be the ID. Yeah. Yeah. So that simplifies it. It means the database call is just to update the database. What we're doing on the front end to know which users are clicked or not is all happening in local arrays, and that's going to simplify and speed up the process a lot, I think. But you've still got some work to do. You still have to think about how you're going to pull the relations. If it's an existing expense item, you're going to have to pull the relations from the database to populate the array when I open an existing expense item, then that current payees array should have one or more people in it already from the database call. So that's another step that you'll have to think about. But yeah, I think like I hope that's helped a bit. But there's a lot of stuff I think to go over for this app.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll probably have to change a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we did it as optimally. Um, so a lot of the things that you've said, like how we're assigning everything and calling it from the database rather than working on it locally,
Yeah.
because we didn't really know how. We were just kind of like figuring stuff as we go.
No, no worries.
Um,
Yeah, there's
but
not a huge amount
yeah,
of tutorials available for Noodle, so it's normal. But yeah, we can do another session maybe early next week. We can do something to go through the last parts, and maybe you can work on it yourselves and try to experiment a bit with local data. There's some stuff on my YouTube channel about working with local data and database stuff.
yeah.
So try to work through some of that stuff, and then we can talk next week about having another session to go through some more if you like.
We'll probably play around with it, and if we run into problems, then next week, yeah, you'll get to see it again.
Okay,
So
cool,
thank
nice.
you so much for helping us today.
You're welcome, guys, and I'll
Um,
see you in the Discord.
thank you. Yeah,
All right.
see you
Awesome.
again.
Thank you,
No
Richard.
worries. Take care, guys. Bye bye.
Have a good day. Bye
You too.
bye.
Bye bye. Bye
Bye.
bye.